everybody, and welcome back to the water cooler, which is exactly what I say every time I meet somebody at a water cooler at work. People don't like seeing me at the water cooler at work because of that reason. For those of you who don't remember, the water cooler segments are just sort of our off-topic shows. It's been a while since we've done one. For those of you who have wondered what's been going on with that, we're obviously doing it again, and it was recommended to us that we actually have other people on and ask them about them. So I am here again with Paul, as always. How are you doing, Paul?
Hello, mate of thee.
Good. And we are joined by our good friend who appeared recently on our episode about the Quest for Glory series. Welcome back to the show, Hope.
Hi. Glad to be back. Thank you for having me be back.
Always a pleasure, literally, and always meaning once before and starting now twice.
Now and forever.
Yes. How are you doing? How's life treating you?
Doing well. It's October here in New Orleans where I live, which means it's
I'm pretty sure it's October.
Degrees.
I'm pretty sure it's October in a lot of places in the world.
Listen, I heard that it is October, which here in New Orleans means that it is not 100 degrees every day. It's only 70 or 80 degrees every day, which is a nice change. But we get really excited about that holiday specifically because we love to dress up. So I am in a festive mood and happy for the change and excited for Halloween.
So is it usually really hot in New Orleans?
Yeah, I would say we have like a 9-month summer. In the same way that, in the far reaches of the north, you have the long winter, we have the long summer.
Right.
It's probably my least favorite thing about New Orleans. I know a lot of people love it and they live here because they hate snow, but I get a little tired of it. I sweat a lot, but we're almost done with it for this year.
There you go. Anything that goes on for too long is just generally...
it just gets old.
It gets old, yeah.
Yeah.
So at the end of recording last time, we actually chatted for quite a bit longer than the actual recording, and you mentioned a background in theater.
Yeah.
So is that like did you go to school for that? Like, are you formally trained?
In as much as you would have at an undergraduate level that was not a conservatory, I suppose. I do have a theater degree.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so an actual official degree.
Yes. My background is drama and anthropology. Because I decided to pick the two most interesting things to me and not necessarily what would get me paid in the long run.
Yes.
Follow your joy, I guess. But no, I did theater all growing up. I still really love performing. I don't have as much time to do it these days, but I did love performing and I still do. Was in a lot of plays, a lot of musicals, really like doing comedies, and a little bit of voice work here and there. But again, nothing too official.
Yeah, you mentioned voice work as well. Is that something that you want to get into? You said something about did you do some voices for video games or something like that at some point?
Actually, I voiced on the AGI remakes of King's Quest 1 and 2.
Oh, wow.
Way back in the very early aughts. I guess they were called Tierra when they first started, and then is it AGI or ADGI? I don't want to show my ignorance.
AGDI?
AGDI?
I think. Yeah.
That's probably right. But their first King's Quest 1 and 2, I was the fairy godmother in King's Quest 1. I had 2 lines. And in their King's Quest 2, that was the whole revamp, I was Angelina the antique stealer, which was a pretty juicy part. That was a really fun, kind of fake out role. I don't know if everyone's played it. Turned out to be not what I seemed. But if you do go back and play those games, please do not judge me because I was 15 when I did those 2 parts and on not a very professional microphone. So I feel very lucky that they had me on. And then I was Rosella for the infamous quest, King's Quest 3.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah, that was really fun. I felt very honored to get to be a Rosella of any kind.
Yeah. That's that's really cool. Are you looking to do more video game voice work?
I would love to. I'm not pursuing it really professionally in any way. I have enough jobs right now. Although if the opportunity came up, I would certainly jump on it and be really happy to chip in. We built a recording studio more or less in a spare closet in our apartment with the materials that we have. We have a pretty good mic set up in there. And so my husband and I both would like to do more voices, either for independent games or mods that people are making, and just throw our voices in the hat. Yeah.
Yes, that's really cool. I'm not sure if I mentioned this before as well, but I have a theater degree. And by that, I mean, I have a technical theater degree, as in I'm a theater tech. Yeah.
Can't do it without y'all. And y'all are the ones that I feel often actually get jobs after college.
They do usually, except I kind of didn't, because it's one of those things where I felt like it was really fun what I was doing. I was a lighting designer, and that was a very fulfilling role and very fun for me. But I also kind of knew right away that as soon as I start doing it professionally, I'm not going to really like it anymore.
That's fair.
Yeah, so I kind of just worked for free for a little bit, just on friends' projects, and eventually I just kind of tapered off because a lot of the performers that I work with kind of stopped doing things professionally, or just didn't really have any control to get me into the projects. And usually when people were just sort of like doing the, renting out the back room of a restaurant or something like that, that's when I would get roles, because it's like, hey, I'll work for free. Like, free is exactly our price. And but not so much anymore. Yeah, but I was basically a jack of most trades, master of none, really bad at some. So
what about you, Paul? Do you have any theater background?
No, I mean, I don't. I'm quite handy with a spool of gaffer tape. So if someone needs like cables taped to the ground, I'm a guy for that. But otherwise, no, I didn't. I'm kind of
that was
surprised.
Most of my job.
A lot of gaffer tape.
Yeah, of cables to the ground. And seriously, that was like a big part of everything I did in university.
No, I'm kind of surprised I didn't. I think there was still like this stigma, especially for guys, or at least where I was growing up, that it wasn't like socially cool or whatever to do that. And unfortunately, I didn't have a strong enough will to just do it because I wanted to. But I do regret not doing it, because I've always been decent at speaking in front of people, and just kind of the extroverted traits that you need to be in theater. But no, not really. I probably did a little bit of what Rick did on a scale model, because my brother is a professional like stop motion animator. So whenever he'd do his own films, and I'd help with the lighting and setting it up. So it's like a model scale version of a big stage.
Very cool.
Part of me always thinks it's a dream to work on a stop motion thing, because like I love stop motion animation, but the other part of me realizes that's probably going to be like really, really brutal work. Yeah,
I can't imagine. I know his back is pretty much shattered at this point in life from doing it all these years. And I did like when we lived together in Los Angeles many years ago, I did like a really short animation. Like he had me make a puppet with him, out of plaster and all that, which was really fun, just making the molds and pouring in the foam latex and making the armatures, and then he had me animate my puppet, and I just had him like do like a knight salute, like bring his hand up and move it out, and it took like 6 days to get like 4 seconds or 6 seconds. Yeah, I was like, I'm out, mate. I'm sorry. This is your passion. I'll support you, but.
What did they say for Nightmare Before Christmas? I think it was like a day's work for 90 seconds of footage.
Yeah, that sounds right, and that's keeping in mind that they've got a huge crew of animators.
Yeah, yeah, and working like around the clock, right? Because I don't know if any of you have worked on set, but they're like minimum 12-hour days, more typically like pushing 16, 18.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see that, and I know with my brother, like he gets into positions, especially with stop motion animation, you have to have such a good short-term memory of exactly what your character was doing, if you're just moving a hand up, or just to keep the trajectories all correct, that if it's like 7 p.m. and you've just started to move like a hand, you pretty much got to see it through just so you know what's going on with the whole thing.
Yeah, one of those things that you don't really think about when you're just sitting back and enjoying it from the couch, right?
Yeah,
I actually have a single Jack Skellington head from that movie that someone traded my husband for work way back in the 90s. It's on the mantle. He's
like
making
the official,
a scary face.
like the officially used prop, or like...
It was either a prop or it was a mold. It's definitely it's a scary, he's making an angry face, and it's not colored, so I'm wondering if it wasn't maybe a mold for something that they used later. It's all just plain white.
Right.
But it was used for something in that movie, and I don't know if my husband did computer work or some odd job for this person, and they were like, well, I can't pay you, but here's John Skellington head that we used in the movie, and he was like, trade. Like, sounds good. Deal. We have a lot of strange ephemera between the two of us.
Do you have any interesting theater stories? Like, did you do a lot of theater after university, or even just like in university? Did you have like some really cool roles?
No. Gosh, my favorite part that I did was probably Noises Off. I was Brooke in Noises Off, which, are you familiar with that show?
Not that one, no.
Noises Off is a British comedy. It's very complicated. It's really funny. It's really complicated. It's a play within a play. These actors are putting on a show called, I think Nothing On is the show they're putting on. It's a Benny Hill-esque comedy that they're trying to put up. And you see the play first when they're in rehearsal with the director coming in and giving them notes. The second act, the entire set turns and you see it from backstage as they're putting the show up for real. And then the third act, the set turns again and you see them later on in their run when they all hate each other and are having affairs and are just messing with each other the entire way through. It's a really complex show, but it's really funny. Carol Burnett is in the movie version.
Oh, nice.
But it's a fantastic show. That was my favorite play that I did. I also, on the other side of the spectrum, got to play Clytemnestra in the Oresteia. So that was my big villainous role.
That is awesome. I love the Oresteia.
That was really fun. Yeah. So that was a really cool, bloody, I get to both kill people with an axe and get stabbed in the same show. It's pretty rad. It's kind of everything you want.
Aren't death scenes the best?
It was really fun. And we had the minty blood, so it tasted pretty good. Just convenient. And then the big musical that I did in college, because it was a smaller school, we only ever did one musical every 4 years, was Carousel, which of all the musicals to have not aged well. But I did get to play the comedic best friend, Carrie, and that was a lot of fun. It was a really fun part that I got to play, at least.
Okay, good.
So
was that kind of like Oh, sorry, I was going to say, was that like a comic relief kind of part?
Yes, which was always my favorite. She's
nice,
sort of a daffy best friend, but some good songs and some good lines, which I always appreciate.
Nice. Yeah.
I used to host burlesque here in New Orleans. That's really the only theater I've done here. There's actually quite a bit of a burlesque revival in New Orleans that's been going on for the past decade. And I can't dance for anything. I am a terrible dancer. Anyone will tell you, and I will tell you. But I can sing and I can tell jokes. So I occasionally would get hired as the host of the burlesque show. And my burlesque alter ego was Anne Howe.
Anne Howe. Nice.
Thought was very good. And I would tell a combination of my own material and right, got it. You get it eventually. And vaudeville jokes. So historic vaudeville was a lot of fun to research. A lot of Sophie Tucker and old material that's really filthy for 100 years ago is really solid stuff and still funny.
There has generally, I think, been a bit of a revival of burlesque recently. I can only imagine more so in New Orleans.
Oh, yeah.
But I can't say I've seen very many of them, but I've seen some. And I don't know, it strikes me that you don't have to be the best dancer to be a burlesque dancer.
You've not seen me dance, Rick. It's bad.
I think as long as you're willing to just sort of like shake something here and there, just sort of, you can, that's all you really need. And not to, talk down to burlesque dancers. I'm sure they're capable of really good dance. And some parts of the show involve some really good dance, but I think like most of them, or not most, but like some of them, there's parts where they're just kind of like, you just got to be there and look nice.
It depends.
I'm glad you said that. I think a large part of our listening audience is burlesque dancers, so that was a good paddle back.
Never know.
As far as being like a bad dancer in burlesque, it is. Well, I guess if you think of like Elaine from Seinfeld with like nipple tassels, that could probably bring the show down. It's important to have
at least a little bit of rhythm.
I suppose.
It's important to not fall down when you're attempting to take your stocking off and just fall right over. It's not a good look unless it's intentional, and it's usually not for me.
Okay. I mean, I guess you require basic coordination, but
And you'd be surprised. There's an entire subculture of burlesque that is nerdlesque. So you might have some burlesque dancer listeners. You never know.
yeah. Oh no, I totally that I see that a lot, or not personally go to attend, but I see posters for nerd burlesque all over, especially back in BC when I lived in the Vancouver area. It was a big thing. Like there was always something going on, like Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever. There was even, funny you say, Elaine from Seinfeld. There was actually Seinfeld burlesque at one point. So I can imagine that's actually literally something that happened. They probably actually had Elaine doing the Elaine dance with nipple tassels or something.
I would pay good money for that. Yeah. So what is the nerd burlesque? Is that just like cosplay with like sexy dancing or whatever?
Often it will be the dancers portraying, characters, especially characters that they really like from different fandoms. And like Rick said, I mean, you'll see Star Wars, you'll see Harry Potter, you'll see Mario. There was a horror one that happened pretty recently where it was just all the famous, movie monsters. There's a Muppet one coming up.
I've always wanted to see Godzilla shake his boobs.
Oh, there have been burlesque Godzillas, 100%. And it's usually, they're often meant to be funny.
Of course.
So you'll have, everything's on theme. I'm trying to think of an example.
Yeah. I think the main point is the comedy. I don't think anyone's like...
Yeah. No, it's mostly meant to be funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of this conversation, I'm picturing every villain from every horror movie in nipple tassels now, and it's delightful.
It's been done.
And it's been done. It's 100% been done.
There's like a Rule 34, but instead of the internet, of burlesque.
Yeah. If it exists, there's a burlesque of it. Almost certainly.
In case anyone ever wanted to see Worf do a windmill on stage. And now anyone listening is picturing it.
When I first moved to New Orleans, I thought I would try to dance. And I did one burlesque actual dance. And I started off singing. And I was singing about how, you were no stranger to love. And you knew the rules. And so did I. And, I talked about our commitment and what I was thinking of. And then it went into the actual dance, which was Never Gonna Give You Up. And... this massive Rickroll. And so when I went to strip down, the tops and the bottoms actually was not down to pasties. It was still like a lingerie set that had Rick across the boobs and roll across the butt. So it was
nice.
A further disappointment. But it was fun. It was cute. But that's the only dance that I ever did.
All right. Well, that's and did you fall over? Is that why you don't do it anymore?
I nearly did. I watched the video and realized while the concept was incredibly solid, the execution was not what I think I would have wanted to see in the long
run. And now you do haunted walking tours.
I do. Yeah, so my main bill-paying job in New Orleans that I've done for the past 9 years is I am a walking tour guide. So we started out as a ghost tour company, and that's still really the bread and butter for a lot of tour guides in New Orleans. And it's still something that I do and enjoy doing, is walking around the French Quarter at night and telling people ghost stories and folklore and grisly history. And then I also do tours in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, which is where Marie Laveau's tomb is located, the Voodoo Queen of New Orleans. And I do a Saints and Sinners tour, which is raunchy French Quarter history, a little bit more risque, but still very history heavy tour. And then I can do a true crime tour by request. So those are my big four.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That actually sounds, all of those sound really awesome to me. I'm a big, I myself am a big horror fan, so I love this kind of stuff. And there's like, I think I saw you mention once about like some famous New Orleans axe murderer or something like that.
Oh, yeah. So it's 2019 when we're recording this, and that marks the 100-year anniversary of the Axeman of New Orleans, Maine, stalking the streets of the city of New Orleans. He is one of our more famous serial killers, and he's an old school serial killer. Well, it's New Orleans, let's be real.
Yeah.
He's one that's from 100 years ago, and so it's okay to talk and joke about him a little bit more than anyone that would be more recent.
Right.
He's almost certainly dead.
The statute of limitations of humor.
He's an Edwardian era serial killer. It's not nearly as in poor taste, I suppose. But
so what you're saying is like that listeners cannot call too soon at us.
I mean, I guess you can call too soon at anything, but he is from literally 100 years ago. We had a little bit of a Axiversary for him, not for him per se, but there's a specific event. So I'll tell you the story. We'll set the scene. So it's 1918 and 1919 were the years that he was stalking New Orleans. And I say they never caught him. It could have been a lady. Let's be real. It was a man. And so 1918 and 1919, this killer is on the loose in the streets of New Orleans. He earns the title the Axeman because he uses an axe to kill his victims. It's not his axe. He would always add insult to injury by using the axe of the victims whose house he'd broken into. The first thing he would do was go to their shed or go to their closet, find their axe, and then kill them with their own implement and leave it behind, which was an interesting calling card for him. He primarily would prey on entire families, and specifically Italian merchant families were some of his main victim groups. The police wrote him off as infighting and possibly something to do with the mafia, which people had a lot of ideas about at the time for New Orleans Italian immigrants, which is pretty racist for the time. But the police ignored it and eventually realized, no, we can't ignore this. This is a serial killer. But it all comes to a head in 1919 in March when a letter is sent to the local newspaper that is said to be penned by the Axeman. And it's kind of like the Jack the Ripper from Hell letters, and you can read this online. The Axeman loves to hear himself talk or write, so it's pretty long. But he claims that he's a demon from hell and he can kill as many people as he likes and no one can stop him, but that he is going to make a proposition to the people of New Orleans. And he says, here it is. I am very fond of jazz music. And I swear by all the devils in hell that anyone who plays jazz on this night that I've determined I'm going to walk the streets will be spared the axe. And he signs off and says, if you play jazz, it will go better for you. And so this particular night, March 19th, 1919, everybody freaks out, plays jazz. Jazz was, a fairly new, very exciting style of music, and a very New Orleans style of music, of course, at the time. So people are going to jazz halls, playing jazz records, getting their uncle who can halfway play the piano to feverishly play inside their house. And sure enough, no one dies that night. So March 19th, 1919 is the big day for the Axeman, and that was the Axiversary this past year. But he was never caught. He disappears into antiquity. We think he probably left the state and maybe even left the country. As long as he was not actually a demon from hell, he's dead now, so we don't have to worry about him. But he's a big New Orleans character.
So that whole that big night on March 19th, that was, I think that was the last anyone had heard from him.
He would show up a few more times after that.
Oh, he would. Okay.
He would. And he didn't kill everybody that he attacked. There were actually a handful of people, some very tragically, that did survive, even when other people in the house didn't. But no, he was never actually caught. But he sort of peters off, and we think he left town.
Right.
Well, and if you watch the show American Horror Story, that third season is set in New Orleans, and they use the Axeman as a character, and they change him up. They make him a slightly more classic serial killer, and they actually make him a jazz musician, and that's why he's so fond of it. But we really don't know.
Right.
And there's even some folks that say that he didn't really write the letter and that it was written by a jazz musician instead, which is a pretty fun theory. But I like to think it was him just because he sounds like such an asshole.
Yeah, serial killers tend to be jerks.
Right. Turns out he's got this lovely penmanship. Yeah. No. I should say he sounds like such a goofball. He sounds like such a dork. And his claiming to be a demon.
Yeah, it's the first sign.
When you give these tours, how? Because I've been on, I think, just one of these myself in St. Augustine in Florida. I went on a ghost tour there, and I was wondering, what's the rule on having to believe in the stories you're telling, or maybe just ask you personally, do you actually believe any of the stories that you are telling?
So we can't prove a ghost, and I never presume to tell people this is exactly what ghosts are, or this is, what I believe about them specifically, because it's one of those things that we can't know. You can't prove a negative. But what we do is we approach it from the perspective of history and of folklore. So everything that we can know, all of the history where we can look up dates and we can look up occurrences, that we get as tight as possible. And then we share the ghost stories. And I think among tour guides in New Orleans, across the spectrum, you'll see some folks that 100% hardcore believe in ghosts, see ghosts, talk to ghosts. You'll have folks that are more interested in the history aspect, and they'll tell you the folklore, and they're not, maybe they secretly don't believe in ghosts. I do believe there's something out there, but I don't presume to know what it is. And I think it might be something that we figure out with science, or as Terry Pratchett would say, something to do with quantum later on in time. But I do love the history, and I do love the folklore, and I love stories, above all. And so I think being able to share these stories, it's also a really good way to sneakily teach people about New Orleans and teach people about history that wouldn't otherwise
you're one of them.
Taking a class.
I hate when I get tricked into learning stuff. Damn.
Right? So there's a lot of tricking people into knowing more about the world via the ghost tours. I know, which makes me really happy.
Mm-hmm. I know I've been on I think probably the only haunted tour that I've been on, surprisingly, because I love these. And I love horror and hauntings and stuff like that. The only haunted tour I've really been in was Victoria, BC, which is a very haunted place. But I also lived in New Westminster, BC. It's kind of redundant to have a haunted tour because it's basically, here's the city. Like, it's all haunted. Do we all have, like, personal haunted stories, like personal ghost stories?
Oh, hell, I punched a ghost.
Oh, perfect.
Would you like to hear about it?
I would love to hear the story of you punching a ghost.
All right. Well, I'll set the scene. So I do tell this one sometimes on my ghost tour. Often I'll use it to fill for time, or if people specifically want to know if I've seen a ghost. And keep in mind, this is all from my perspective, but it makes me sound awesome. And so I like to tell it.
Of course.
So I've lived in New Orleans a little over 10 years. And early on in my time here, my best friend, who had a fantastic apartment that most people don't actually have in New Orleans, i.e., a balcony overlooking, just outside the French Quarter, beautiful wrought iron. She had the whole deal. And she went on vacation for a few weeks and asked if I would stay at this nice historic apartment and feed her cats and keep an eye on things. And I'm like, yes, staycation. So she goes out, I move in. The first week, everything is totally fine, copacetic, great. The second weekend, I have this incident. So I'm still house sitting. I'm asleep in the bed, and I wake up at about 3 a.m. And I look up and I realize there is a man in the room, and he's standing at the foot of the bed. And he's a tall guy, skinny, nicely dressed. He was wearing a lightweight tan summer suit, lightweight tan summer hat, kind of Mad Men era, early 1960s. And I did not think it was a ghost. He was in full color, just, looked like a person that you would see out on the street. He was not see-through like a ghost in a movie. Like I said, he was not all blue or all green like a ghost you think of in a cartoon. It just looked like a guy. And so I didn't think it was a ghost. I thought it was a break-in. Or I thought it was some drunk person that had wandered out of a bar, or some psycho who was trying door handles up and down the street. And I thought, I've left the gate open and this stranger has come in. And I always say, heaven forbid anyone ever actually breaks into my house, because I did not do anything I should have done. My phone was right there, and I didn't call 911. And they had a weapon in the apartment. I didn't jump for the weapon. Instead, I was like, fight or flight. And I tried to punch him, which was never going to work because he was 10 feet away and I was sitting up in bed. But I swing like an idiot, and he reacts. He goes from the foot of the bed closer to me. So he walks all the way to the side of the bed, level with my shoulder, looks at me, narrows his eyes, cocks his head, and disappears. And at that moment, I was like, thank God it's a ghost. Because I always wanted to see a ghost. I never wanted someone to break in my house.
Yeah.
And so I texted my friend the next day. I said, there is a ghost in your house, but don't worry, I've punched him. And he went away. And so my advice to you is that if you ever encounter some kind of supernatural entity and you want it to leave you alone, you should punch it in the face, because the ghost will be so disappointed in you and judge you so harshly that it just gives you the stink eye and leaves you alone. But that is my personal ghost encounter. And while it could have been a dream, it definitely wasn't sleep paralysis because clearly I had my full range of motion. I've never had a dream, just like that since. So I say I punched a ghost because, as I said, it makes me sound awesome.
Well, I do have to say, anytime I try to make friends with somebody and they throw a fist at my face, I do tend to get a little bit hurt and leave them alone.
No, I feel it. And honestly, in hindsight, if I see any more ghosts, I will not react with violence, but if I think it's a person that's broken into my house, you do what
That's
you gotta
exactly it. It wasn't really, he should have made himself more obvious as a ghost.
I know. At least have the courtesy to look like a ghost.
Yeah, exactly. Don't
walk through a wall, something.
I know he intended to present well, but it's can't you at least really show your skull dressed. Or something like that?
Just take your head off for a second, something, so I know. Way less scary that way.
Mm-hmm. Punched a surprisingly fashionable ghost in the face. It really sounds like you just hurt his feelings in the end. That was bloody rude. Jeez.
I had my friends were like, you could have learned the secrets of the afterlife and you just reacted with violence. And I'm like, look, thought my life was in danger. Thought it was the killer.
But the ghost is thinking I bring you knowledge and wisdom. Fuck off.
Look how nicely I've dressed up for this interview. Nope.
I'm glad to hear that you didn't reach for your phone or a weapon because that makes a lot of movies more believable now.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point. Anytime you think, actually, we talked about this. I can't remember if it was on the show or not, but it was Paul and I were talking about horror, and sort of people always wonder why did they just do that really stupid thing? I'm like, do you know people? There's more stupid people than there are smart people in the world, and they don't do things that they're supposed to do. But,
yeah, you kind of do just whatever comes to your brain in the moment, I think.
Yeah. Not saying what you did was stupid. That's exactly what I would have done, is thrown a fist at somebody that I thought was a person in my house.
Well, the fact is, you have fight, flight, or freeze, and I'm very proud that I went for fight. So
yeah, absolutely.
I'm okay with it.
Because it would have been stupid if you didn't, and it was a person. And then...
Right? They're just like,
but instead you're like, you're a ghost, aren't you? Okay. Tell me how you work.
Who were you?
Do you have any actual first-hand haunted experiences, Paul?
I do. I've got two. One of them's real quick. This one was just strange because I was in my house. I was quite young. I was probably 16 or whatever. I was in my house with my girlfriend, so I did have a witness because that was important for sanity. And we had been home alone in the house for hours. So everything checks out. In other words, I tested this story for any holes or anything like that. I just can't find one. We're home alone in the house for hours, and we both decide to head out and get some food or whatever. And we start walking down the stairs, and there's a candle downstairs on the coffee table, and it just lit. It came into fire. How do you say a candle started? It turned on.
Ignited. It ignited?
There we go. Ignited. Yeah. Words.
Was it a particularly hot day that day?
Well, actually, it was. I think it was Florida, but yeah, I mean, it was just strange. It's not like the candle wasn't previously lit, and a gust of whatever the AC, reignited the wick. It was definitely not lit at all for days, and it just turned on. So that was one that was just really strange. Not necessarily a figure of a ghost involved, but that was just strange. And then there was one other. I was staying with my bruv who, at the time we were in Savannah, Georgia, which
good place for haunting.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, the town sets it all up for that kind of vibe. And earlier in the week, there was a lot of police and forensic crews and all kinds of hullabaloo, a lot of stuff going on right across the street. From his house was an abandoned house, and the police and everyone was there for a couple of days. There's a bunch of yellow tape and everything, but no one had lived in the house because it was abandoned. It was kind of in ruins, and so about the third day, I walked over there with my brother, and he asked the police what's going on here. And as he's talking to them, I just kind of start wandering and looking around, and I walk over to where these people are digging into the soil, and I saw for myself human remains. There was a rib cage and like an arm or something like that I could make out. They were literally digging out human bones from under the ground of this place. And I go back to my brother, and I'm listening in, and the cops basically saying that there was a guy there who camped out in this house for weeks or months, or I guess probably years, considering it was just bone at that point. And he was just luring in homeless people and murdering them, and then burying them, I guess, in the ground underneath the house. So that was well intense. You know, I was quite young at the time. So it was really scary. And then like 4 or 5 days later, we were all sitting in the living room. Actually, my brother was trying to get me to watch Star Wars for the first time. And all of a sudden there was just like this intense bang on the wall. And it followed this pattern where like, what's the best way to say it? Like the north part of the wall, there was a huge bang. And then the south part of the wall, there was a huge bang. And then the wall to our left, and then the wall to the right. And then it would kind of repeat like that Simon game or whatever. Like a pattern a pattern of banging. And it was just, it was definitely, a sound a human could make, but it would be like if you took both of your fists and just as hard as you could wailed into a wall. It was that loud and jarring. And then, like I said, it was going from each wall faster than a human could get there. Like, because again,
that ghost was like, bop it.
Twist
it. Pull it.
Exactly. Yeah, you would have needed like 4 frat boys. He was in college at the time, so I say that. But yeah, it would have needed like some serious choreography if it was a prank. So I really don't think it was, and I don't really know how that ties into what was going on across the street, but just, I guess maybe just sets the scene for an overall creepy atmosphere.
Yeah, that's wild. True crime story right on your doorstep.
With the homeless murder.
Mm-hmm.
But how about you, Rick? You got him?
I think the only one that's actually I visit a lot of haunted places. I think the only actual experience of mine was one time I was when I first moved into the apartment that the last place I stayed in New Westminster, BC, before moving across the country. When I first moved in there, there was one evening where I was like getting ready to do dishes, so I stacked all the plates on the by the side of the sink, and nothing was precarious. It was everything was like, they're just flat dishes stacked on top of another. It wasn't even like a particularly tall stack. Like it wasn't taller than it was wide or anything like that. So it has a very firm foundation and all that. And then I decided, okay, well, I'm just going to I was going to lie down for a minute before I really settle in and start doing the dishes. And so I lie down on the couch in the next room, and then I hear a crash. So I'm like, what the hell is that? Go into the next room. I see like, already if the dishes had just fallen off, I would have assumed maybe there was something like, oh, I didn't stack it properly. I know for sure that I did, but I would have like, just like, okay, fine. I guess I didn't. But as it turns out, like the dishes didn't just fall off. They were like thrown into the hallway.
Whoa.
Like they carried a distance around around a corner. So it's like not like you could just tumble over the edge, which it wasn't even near the edge. That's another thing. It was like, in a very, I stacked it so that it wouldn't fall. It was very much in a place strategically such that it would not be able to do that. And the ghost went up, the quote unquote ghost, whatever you want to call it, went above and beyond and just made sure that it had been thrown to a place that they could not even logistically reach, just to let me know that was impossible to do unless deliberately. So unless I'm a sleepwalker and I was napping at the time, I do not have any explanation for what happened.
Yeah, that's well creepy. Yeah, like you said, it doesn't really matter how well they were stacked. Could have been stacked really poorly, but if it made it 10 feet and around a corner.
Yeah.
It's pretty dramatic.
Yeah. These apparitions have a flair for the dramatics, I've noticed.
Yeah. I don't know what it had against my dishes, though. I guess they're like, clean up after yourself.
You have to soak them before you put them in the dishwasher.
Yeah.
It's the ghost of someone's angry mom. The only one who does anything around here. Are y'all dressing up for Halloween? Are y'all doing any kind of costume or party or anything like that?
That is a good question. Because I don't know if I'm even going out on Halloween.
It's a Thursday this year, huh?
Yeah, I suppose it is, isn't it?
I know it's not a weekend.
And I don't know what to expect. I don't know when people go out for Halloween, if it's in the middle of the week. I don't know when they bring the kids by, if it's going to be on the weekend or if it's going to be the Halloween itself. I don't know how these things work anymore. So
you don't have to. You just leave out like a pack of cigarettes and tell the kids to just take one.
Man, if it was those candy cigarettes, I would be ready. That was one of my favorite candies that you definitely can't find anymore.
Yeah.
Candy cigarettes. They were so good. They were just pure sugar. They were like sugar covered with more powdered sugar so that you could kind of blow on them and it would make a little puff of like flower smoke. But they tasted so good.
Mm-hmm.
We had the candy cigarettes growing up, but the package literally said candy F word. Because I'm talking about growing up in England. I'm not going to say it. It's not fuck. It's the other F word.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
I thought it was candy fuck. I was like, hey, wow.
I thought so at first too, but then I kind of pieced it together when you
then
said,
you realized it was.
Oh, that's what you guys call cigarettes. Yeah.
No, I totally was picturing candy fuck. Yeah. Well,
I think I'm gonna. I've got to figure out what to dress my son as, because I've had some really good ones so far in his first few years. Like one year he was a homeless guy, and I felt like I nailed that. I even got him like a little miniature shopping cart and painted on a beard, and so that was a good one. And one year he was I dressed him up as Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine. And what was cool about that was that Tom actually reposted it on his Instagram, which was awesome. Still one a highlight for me. So I need to try and top those two this year. But what I'm costumes aside, because I always dress up with him. One, because it's fun to pretend, and two, so he's not alone on that. But I think this year, next week, I'm gonna take him down to the Stanley Hotel, just to spend a day, because it's in Estes Park, which is a beautiful, awesome little town here. And then, I guess it's not called the Stanley in the movie, the Overlook Hotel, the hotel from The Shining.
Yeah.
Right.
Shining.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's about 40 minutes away from me. I've been there a couple of times before, and it's just a real creepy place. Not to anyone's surprise to hear that, but it checks out in person. There's something, I'm sure a lot of it's like the mental, like because we know of The Shining and all that's already in your head. I'm sure that has a lot to do with it, but there's something very unsettling about that hotel. Even though it's used as a hotel on the daily, I don't think I'd ever want to stay there. Like there's something definitely spooky about that place. And then there's people like bloody, Jim Carrey, like he won't tell anybody why, but like he basically like refused to go back in that hotel after staying there for a night when he was filming Dumb and Dumber.
Well, he probably blames it for giving his kid autism or something.
Yeah.
Oh Lord.
Exactly. Yeah. That place is it's a really well creepy kind of place. And then, anytime you go in there, there's always a stack of people outside of that room. Bloody, what is it, 237 or whatever the room is in The Shining with the lady in the tub.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Have they kept all the carpets and all the fixtures the same from
Yes.
when it was in the movie?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I think they would have to at this point. I think that's kind of like what everyone goes there to see.
Oh, sure. I just didn't know if,
Yeah.
maybe right after they'd made the poor decision to change it in some way. I feel like that always happens.
They even hired a couple twins to stand in the hallway randomly now and then.
Oh God! If I had twins, I would just camp out there all day and make them just stand in the back of that hallway.
It's funny. I actually really like haunted hotels, and I actually, if I knew that a hotel was haunted, that would like convince me to go there. So one year on my birthday, quite a few years ago, there's a nearby hotel. It was famously haunted. Even more so other than just being in New Westminster. And so I kind of had, like, as a birthday plan, it's like, hey, we're going to rent out this room at this haunted hotel. And it's like hang out, drink, play games and stuff like that. And it'll be fun. So my girlfriend at the time, now wife, she decides to make the booking arrangements. And she calls them and says, like, she said, I'd like to reserve a room, but do you have one that's haunted? And they asked her which one. So she responded, the most haunted one. And then they're like, yes. Oh, you want this room then?
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna stay at the haunted hotel, go all out.
Yeah,
you don't settle for less.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people like you, mate, because I know that room 237 or whatever in the Stanley is booked for I think, I dare say even years in advance. I know it's at least months out, because my daughter had a birthday party there a couple years ago. Her and like a couple close friends, we all stayed in the Stanley, and of course she wanted that room because she's a weirdo like you. And yeah, they were like, it's like 8 months out or whatever. I was like, thank God, because I was going to lie to her either way and say it wasn't available.
Not staying here.
Because I'm the adult here. Like, I'm the one that has to keep my shit together if things do go wrong.
What was the first scary movie that made an impression on y'all?
I've actually got a good one. Mine's almost It is embarrassing. It's a late 80s film called Summer School.
Oh, I don't know if I know that one.
I think I know that one, and that's a scary movie.
Nope, no, it's not.
No, it's the one I'm thinking of, right? Oh, yeah, it's the one with like the two film nerds who like go around like
Yes, yeah. I love that because I heard your hesitation. I'm like, he's doubting himself, but he doesn't realize it is the right film. It's not a horror.
Yeah.
The thing is, I was really young. I was like 8 or whatever. He was playing in the house. I didn't see any of the film. I just walked into the room during this one scene where, because they're like theater kids, like you said, they're playing a prank on somebody. I don't know the movie well. They're playing a prank where they have like a fake human head, and then they have like this robotic hand, like crawl over to the head and rip the tongue out of the head.
Oh, God.
And that was the only part of the movie I saw, because I walked in, that scene played out, I screamed, freaked out, and ran the fuck away. And then for years, I'm like, I don't know what that movie was, mate, but that's the scariest shit you'll ever see. And then finally somebody who remembered the scene was like, are you talking about bloody Summer School? That was like a B comedy movie in the 80s. But yeah, that fucked me up for years. I had nightmares for so long over that movie. I might be the only person to have had night terrors from Summer School.
How about, actually, sorry, going back, Hope, was there any, did you have any costume ideas for this year for Halloween?
So I always run out of time because I work so much being a ghost tour guide that I often have to work on Halloween. And so I usually will save my good costumes for Mardi Gras when everyone is off, except for bartenders, which I am not. So I get to enjoy Mardi Gras. Mm-hmm. But I was thinking about dressing up as Natasha Lyonne, or is it Natasha Leone? Her character in Russian Doll has a really great look on Netflix.
Right.
And so I thought about trying to be her, but I'm having a hard time finding the perfect wig, which is really the whole point of that costume. I may be able to cut a Merida wig or something like that, but that's what I'm thinking about for this year.
Okay.
I was Persephone last year. It was a modern Persephone.
Nice.
So I had it was mainly because I got a really cute pin of a like puppy Cerberus, like a really cute 3-headed dog.
Yeah.
And so I made this whole very twee Persephone costume around it and drank pomegranate cocktails and was just sort of undercover. Yeah. But people did get it. They just kind of had to pay attention.
Yeah. That's really awesome. I like it when things are a little bit more creative. And
oh yeah, no, I like to be a character. That's sort of the one way that my theater comes out anymore is Mardi Gras and Halloween. If I'm going to be in a costume, I'm going to act like the character, and sometimes it's really annoying, but I commit.
Yeah, but so now going back to the horror movies, what was your earliest?
Sure, so I was a pretty sheltered kiddo, and I didn't get exposed to too much that was actually scary until middle school, I would say. Okay. So there were, movies like Labyrinth and things that scared me when I was too young to watch them. But when I got to, although Labyrinth now, I do enjoy watching, as do most ladies my age. But so the first actual horror movie that I watched was Scream, and I was terrified of it.
Yes.
And did not understand that it was meant to be like a satire also. I just thought it was straight up the scariest thing I'd ever seen. The idea of people having their like entrails spelled out was too much for me. And I watched it recently. I wouldn't watch it all through even high school. I was just like, nope, can't do it, can't take it. And I watched it recently. It's on Netflix, and I was like, oh, this is brilliant. This is solid. This is not that scary. All of the scenes and it's good. There's some good scares, but yeah, that was another movie that I just had hyped up so much in my head as being the most terrifying thing that actually has a lot of humor in it as well.
It does both really well. Like it functions as a really good horror movie. Or at least a really good slasher movie on top of being a parody of slasher movies. So it's actually, I really like it. I really like that movie. But you did remind me, two actually early examples was from The Dark Crystal,
Oh yeah.
because that was really unnerving. And everyone points to like the dinner scene, which is kind of a little bit grossish, but no, the part that got me was when they had that one. I've seen this movie like dozens of times. I forget what those little things are called. But they took this little thing, this lemming, I guess, I don't know, and strapped him to a chair and had his soul sucked out of him. And it was terrifying. It was
No, I could not have handled the Dark Crystal. I think my family knew.
Yeah,
that I could not have handled the Dark Crystal as a kid. And it's great. It's brilliant.
It's one of my favorite movies now. Yeah.
But no, it would have scared the pants off me as a kid, for sure.
It's no summer school, but it was really scary.
Another one was actually a movie called, and it's claymation too, but it's called The Adventures of Mark Twain.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I saw it at exactly the time when I was young enough to only just start becoming aware of mortality and like the concept of death. And that mysterious stranger segment was so intense that it actually made me morbidly depressed for a very good long while after.
Yeah. No, as soon as you said claymation, I was like, it's that Mark Twain movie. Yeah. I know exactly what he's going to say. It's that damn Mark Twain, Satan and the little clay people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That was a bit much for young me who was just becoming familiar with the concept of death.
That's a bit much for me now.
It kind of is.
It's rough.
Well, Hope, thank you very much again for taking the time to join us. It was a really wonderful chat. I really appreciate you joining us again.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for having me so close to Halloween. It gives us a lot of really fun things to talk about. Absolutely.
It was great to have a little bit more Halloween content because it is a really cool, very fun time of year. So it's nice to partake in that a little bit extra.
All right, yeah, and I would like to also thank you, Hope, for being here. It's always lovely talking to you, and I hope you come back again. It was a lot of fun. And everyone
actually, would you like Paul's job?
Oh, I couldn't presume.
No, if anything, you should take my job. I think I'd rather listen to the two of you talk.
No, it has been fantastic talking to y'all, and anytime, happy to be here. I'm sure we'll talk for 3 hours after this too.
Probably.
All right, everyone, have a safe Halloween, and check your bags and don't do a murder.
And be sure to accept candy from strangers.